Macbeth is a great play. It's fast, poetic, disturbing, psychological, haunting with all its witches, ghosts, and sleepwalking. It's called the Scottish play among actors because there is a fear that if you name the play will end up killing you, harming you. Theaters have been burned. It's a cursed play among actors. It's also possible that the play that we're reading is an abridgment of a longer play because Macbeth is one of the shortest plays. In fact, it's the length of a comedy. Some people think that it might have been the editorial revision, sort of like a revival of an old play done by Thomas Middleton. So Thomas Middleton seems to have rewritten Shakespeare's original version, and that's the version we survive. And the reason why they say that is that all of the witches scenes seem to have come out of Middleton's own play, The Witches. But what's so interesting about the work, whether it's revived or not, is that it speaks to our larger conversation about usurpations that we saw in the Henriade as well as in Hamlet. But we see a different version, in this case from the perspective of a conscious usurper. Remember, Bolingbroke is accidentally running into becoming the king. Furthermore, the usurper is recognized as being one. He's called the tyrant in the play and is eventually killed. What I find fascinating about Macbeth is how the usurpation is associated with an idea or a thought. Throughout the play, thoughts and the way they drive tyrants and killers into action is the primary mechanism for understanding why they act. This is very different again from Bolingbroke, who were never really given any insight into why he's done what he's done. So usurpation begins with an idea, and that idea is planted by the Weird sisters, the witches. Now, weird, remember, comes from Old English word, which means fate. Macbeth appears at first to be a loyal thane or lord to his King Duncan until an idea burrows into his mind. Speak if you can. What are you? First witch. All hail Macbeth, hail to thee, Thane of Glamis. All hail Macbeth, hail to thee, Thane of Cawdor. All hail Macbeth, that shalt be king hereafter. Banquo. Good sir, why do you start and seem to fear? Number 3. Macbeth is disturbed. He knows he's Thane of Glamis. But once he's given the title of the traitor, Candor, that they just defeated, a fitting title for a usurper, by the way, he can't get out of his mind the idea of the second part, that he'll be king. Now, Shakespeare presents these thoughts in an interesting way. He represents Macbeth as being distracted. And then I want you to notice how the dialogue shifts from speaking aloud to his buddy Banquo and 2 messengers, Angus and Ross, talking about Macbeth thinking. Notice also Banquo is kind of like a cat licking his fangs in anticipation of his own good fortune. So pay attention to the way thoughts are interrupted by speech. And remember, any brackets you see in Shakespeare's plays are added by the editors. They're not in the first folio where we find Macbeth. But the dialogue instead, focus on the dialogue. The dialogue will tell you what's happening. So Macbeth asks Angus, the Thane of Cawdor lives, why do you dress me in borrowed robes? Like, why are you dressing me in his clothing? And then Angus says that he has been accused of treasons, capital, confessed and proved, and have overthrown him. And then as he's saying this, Macbeth says, notice the asides are, this is added by the editor, but we can tell that he's thinking, Glamis and Thane of Cawdor, the greatest is behind. Thanks for your pain. Now he's conscious again. Then he says, do you not hope your children shall be kings? Obviously he's speaking to Banquo as this editorial stage direction is added, but you don't need it. You know that he's speaking to Banquo, whom those that gave the Thane of Cawdor to me promised no less to them that trusted home, etc. And then all of a sudden Banquo says, cousins, a word, I pray you. He's now going to the character Ross and Angus. And as he's talking to them, this is obviously clear, we don't need these stage directions. Macbeth now is by himself, and when you're by yourself, that's a soliloquy. Those are his thoughts. Two truths are told as happy prologues to the swelling act. That's a theatrical illusion. This supernatural soliciting cannot be ill, cannot be good. If ill, why hath it given me earnest of success? In other words, if prophecies are terrible, why do I feel so happy? This is reminding us of Petrarch. Commencing in a truth, I am Thane of Cawdor. If good, why do I yield to that suggestion? Whose horrid image doth unfix my hair? What's the horrid image? He's starting to think of killing the king, and makes my seated heart knock at my ribs against the use of nature. In other words, to do something that's against nature. Macbeth continues, present fears are less than horrible imaginings. He's already thinking of the next step. Murder. How else do you get to be a king if Duncan is alive and has it? My thought, whose murder yet is but fantastical, right? The murder as a thought is a product of the mind, shakes so my single state of man. He's now being divided by his thoughts and by his fantasy. That function is smothered in surmise, right, in speculation. And nothing is but what is not. It's the product of the mind, of fantasy, of imagination. It's being formed in his mind. And notice how Banquo calls attention to these thoughts by remarking upon them to Ross and Angus. Look how our partners rapped. Thoughts have taken over Macbeth. And then we're back to Macbeth, and it's a soliloquy, right? Because isn't that what a soliloquy is, an aside, right? He's making a decision. He'll wait and see what happens to him by chance. If chance will make me king, why, chance may crown me without my stir, right? Without me having to do anything active about it. And Macbeth's thoughts will be interpreted by Banquo, still talking to Ross and Angus. New honors come upon him. He's commenting on Macbeth's new positions, right? New political positions, like our strange garments, like new clothes, cleave not to their mold, but with the aid of use. They're uncomfortable. They're like wearing new shoes. You have to get used to them, and they've got to conform to your foot in order to make them comfortable. Macbeth, thinking on his own, come what come may, time and the hour runs through the roughest day. They're not talking to each other, Macbeth, because Macbeth is in his own until mind. Banquo interrupts Macbeth's thoughts, who explains how he was in deep thought. Banquo calling attention that they're waiting for Macbeth. Worthy Macbeth, we stay upon your leisure. Give me your favor. My dull brain was wrought or agitated with things forgotten. Kind gentlemen, your pains are registered where every day I turn the leaf to read them. Let us towards the king. And then, as they're leaving, he speaks to Banquo. Think upon what hath chanced in it. It's a marvelous scene because we see how thoughts crowd out the speaking of the characters on stage. Shakespeare's drawing attention to the power of thoughts, how it effaces your entire public identity. And this is confirmed in the next scene by Duncan when he reflects on the traitor Candor, how he seemed a great guy, but you could never tell what he was thinking. There's no art to find the mind's construction in the face. In other words, there's no means of figuring out what a person is thinking by looking at their face. It's a proverbial phrase. It means the face does not reveal the thoughts, and there's no way he would have known about it. It also explains why it's so scary when Macbeth and Lady Macbeth act so warmly to Duncan the night they kill him. And his trust in them. I mean, he's so wrong to believe that they're friendly because of how they present themselves to him. See, our honored hostess, the love that follows us sometime is our trouble, which still we think is love. He lacks the art, especially when Lady Macbeth knows there's a greater one when she rebukes her husband. Criticizing her husband. Your face, my Thane, is as a book. Like I can read your face like a book, where men may read strange matters. To beguile the time, in other words, to trick it, look like the time. Bear welcome in your eye, your hand, your tongue, look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent underneath it. He that's coming, referring to the king, must be provided for. And you shall put this night's great business into my dispatch, which shall to all our nights and days to come give solely sovereign sway and masterdom. 25. The king also ironically describes Macbeth's growing acceptance of killing the king and becoming a king as a planting. Welcome hither. I've begun to plant thee and will labor to make thee full of growing. The Weird Sisters planted an idea related to the king planting further ambitions in Macbeth by making him the Thane of Cawdor, the traitor's title, remember? He's planting an invasive weed that will choke him. In our next episode, we'll look at how Duncan is killed and the consequences of that killing with the dagger speech.
Alright guys, don't forget to like and subscribe and ring that notification bell.